The glass mask. In the city of Azure, people wore masks. Not ornate, theatrical masks, but thin, fragile ones made of glass. They were clear and sparkling, revealing the wearer's features, but with a curious twist. The glass reflected only the acceptable parts of a person, smoothing over imperfections like anger, lust, or greed. The rest, the messy truth, stayed trapped behind the fragile facade. Nina had worn her mask since she was a child. It had been fitted for her by her parents, who whispered lessons about how to walk, talk, and behave like a proper lady. She learned quickly. Smile, but not too wide, speak, but only when spoken to, and always agree with the men. Azure's women were expected to shine like their masks, bright, delicate, and harmless. By the time Nina was 20, her mask was flawless. She moved through the social halls of Azure with practiced grace, her face a polished mirror of perfection. Men admired her poise, women envied her charm, and elders nodded approvingly as she curtsied just low enough to appear humble but not desperate. But inside, Nina hated the mask. She hated the weight of it, the pressure to maintain its illusion. Behind the glass, her real thoughts roiled like a storm. She wanted to scream at the men who leered at her in the marketplace. She wanted to laugh, loud, raucous laughter, at the absurdity of her life. Most of all, she wanted to run. Run far away from Azure, from its masks, its rules, and its hypocrisy. One evening, at a lavish ball hosted by the mayor, Nina saw a man whose mask was cracked. His name was Elias, a newcomer to Azure, and his mask bore a thin fracture that ran diagonally across his left cheek. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but Nina's practiced eyes caught it immediately. Through the crack, she glimpsed something raw and real, a flicker of doubt, perhaps even rebellion. Intrigued, Nina approached him. "Your mask," she said softly, "it's damaged." Elias smiled, the crack widening slightly. "I know, aren't you afraid someone will see?" "Let them see," he said. "The mask doesn't define me." Nina had no response. She had spent her whole life polishing her mask, terrified of even the smallest scratch. Yet here was a man who wore his imperfection without shame. It was intoxicating. Over the next few weeks, Nina and Elias grew close. He showed her hidden parts of Azure, places where the masked rarely ventured, a bustling tavern where laughter was loud and unfiltered, an artist's studio where paintings burst with untamed colors, a quiet meadow where the air felt free. With Elias, Nina began to imagine a life without the glass, a life where she could be herself. But the city noticed. Whispers spread about the perfect Nina associating with a man whose mask was flawed. At first, she ignored them, emboldened by Elias's courage. But the pressure grew unbearable. At a council meeting, the mayor himself summoned Nina. "Your behavior is unbecoming," he said, his mask glinting under the chandelier. "You risk tarnishing your reputation, and ours. If you continue, there will be consequences." Trembling, Nina nodded. She retreated to her home, her heart heavy with shame and fear. That night, she stared at her mask in the mirror, her fingers tracing its edges. She thought of Elias, of his crack, of the life he had shown her. Then she thought of the city, of the people who would shun her, of the emptiness that would follow. When dawn broke, Nina made her choice. She arrived at the central square, where the citizens of Azure gathered each morning. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her mask. The crowd gasped. Beneath the glass, her face was raw and imperfect, her cheeks flushed, her eyes blazing with emotion. For the first time, they saw her not as a reflection, but as a person. Some averted their eyes. Others whispered. But Nina stood tall, unyielding. She spotted Elias in the crowd, his cracked mask gleaming like a badge of honor. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. The first crack in Azure's illusion had formed. And through it, light began to pour in.